Alright, let me start with a hot take, okay? It's gonna be very bold. I don't like the PP19. Never have. I've always thought that the Bison was, or Bison, or whatever the hell you want to call it, was such a stupid design. And in the airsoft world, they tend to suck as bad as just about every AEG AUG. Only when Black Ops Cold War made the Bullfrog did I think it look okay. And when Killzone made the Uzion. This is cool. Even when everyone was wanking the Vityaz, I just didn't care about it. But then Arcturus decided to release this.
Do that again? I got scared, so I flinched.
This is the PP19 SP1 Z-Tac Carbine. Or Carbine. You're gonna hear me say it both ways, and I don't care if you don't like it. And since Arcturus based this one on a real PP19, and didn't just eyeball it, this one is truly 1-to-1 scale. Every single person I've talked to loves this thing, even though it sports a price tag of $600. The CQB model drops $100 from the price tag, and it's smaller, just in case if this one is too girthy for your baby bitch hands. There's a massive list of stuff that I like about these limited edition Perun MOSFET equipped, steel bodied, as true as an AEG can be, offerings from Arcturus. One of my all-time favorite brands right now. And that's exactly why I'll be reviewing this one. So now we're going to dive into the SP1 and see if it's really worth its $600 price tag, when the most popular of its competitors can be had for about $380 instead. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to see where this one kicks all the others in the ass so hard. But let's go over all the pros and cons, performance and features to see if the Arcturus PP19 is truly worth it.
This all begins where we always do, with the unboxing. Across this limited edition release, all of the PP19s arrive in this white cardboard box with some information all over it. The most important, in my opinion, being the features of the included Perun optical MOSFET inside. You'll see that you'll have one of 500 of the model that you ordered, but the real fun begins when we open the box. Under the foam and the included paperwork, your new Arcturus replica comes with all sorts of goodies, like 2 variable mid-cap magazines, included muzzle devices, military spec rail segments for the Zenitco style rail if your model has one. You'll get an Arcturus logo magnet, patch, Dean's to small type connection adapter, a guide to program your Perun MOSFET to your liking, a quality certificate, and a very detailed paperback manual with exploitive views of all the important parts that you'll need. Arcturus is already doing a lot to impress me, and it's working. And some other models come with different parts and accessories, like how the Carbine comes with this little hand stop. So again, I'm impressed. But with the 2 magazines and these 2 replicas out, I can move on to my first impressions, which start off great immediately, thanks to the steel body and tight tolerances throughout. Nothing rattles or bends that shouldn't, only the stock has some up and down play. Pretty much every side folding stock does, and that's a sad flaw in the general design. All the Zenitco style markings are a great touch, and you already feel that this thing can the field up in the right hands. I noticed the rotary style hop up pretty quickly, and I think it's the only one of its kind right now, but I could be wrong about that. Even the more simple PP19s feel great. And again, this is coming from someone who doesn't much care for this platform at all. But quickly going over the measurements, we've got a weight of 6 pounds, 14.4 ounces, or 3.13 kilos for the SP1 Carbine model, while the mid-cap magazine comes in at just 4.3 ounces or 122 grams. This replica is pretty long though, I'll be real with you. It's admittingly defeating the purpose of the pistol caliber carbine, so if you want to get the most basic Arcturus PP19, then here are the weights and measurements. Moving along, but going a little bit out of order for this review, I'm going to start the features list by going over all the bougie tactical stuff that most people care about when it comes to the Carbine and CQB model. First off, prepare to get a lot of compliments if you plan to rock one of these. At pretty much every game and at every field that I took one of these Arcturuses to, people wanted to check them out or ask me who makes them. The included hollow mock suppressors, muzzle brakes, handguards with included Picatinny rail segments, upgraded pistol grip, and fully adjustable stock are major pluses to people. I also really like the inclusion of the plastic magwell flare that comes with all of these. But I can tighten it down against the actual magwell to the point of breaking it apart, and it still slips off. I'm really considering gluing mine in place or drilling some pilot holes into the actual magwell, because when it stays put, it's really useful. But that never actually happens. It's to the point that I've dropped this mag flare on the field a couple times, and by just luck have I found it. Anyway, you can get pretty elaborate with these rail kits that are made in-house, and like I said, include 2 real spec rail segments. But I honestly just like the look with the included hand stop and nothing else. Maybe I'll throw on a flashlight at some point, but this grip and my RMR on the riser rail just looks really good. The stock, as you can tell, allows for cheek height adjustment, length of pull, and you can even fold it to the side if you'd like with the press of a button. Just don't try to force it back open. The stock's hinge can be really stiff out of the box, to the point that I had to use the side of my kitchen counter to release the stock the first couple of times. So be aware of this. This is not something I can just do whenever I want. Sometimes it isn't a problem at all and I can just do it whenever. But other times it just doesn't want to fold back over. So this is my only real con about it so far. All around, this all steel Zenitco style stock is really nice, especially with the rubber butt pad, cheek riser, and the sturdy sling points. Something I would like to mention, however, is that some people have missed that you can actually adjust the height of the butt pad with the use of a flathead screwdriver. Moving along, the iron sights are what you would expect of any AK variant, but obviously these two are meant to be used with some type of optic. Even so, I like the tunnel through the sight riser rail. Then at the outer barrel's end, we get a really easy to remove orange M4 birdcage flash hider on the US models, but underneath we have standard 14mm counterclockwise threads, so you can add on anything you want. I for one would probably only run these with the included hollow aluminum suppressors, but you can do whatever you would like. Again, I just think this setup looks really good. For the inner barrel information, it's 365mm and made from carbon steel, with a 6.02mm diameter that's been QPQ coated. We'll see if this matters later on in the accuracy tests. The front end is followed up by the fully steel-built receiver area that features all the AK functions that you come to remember. But some added features still grace the charging handle, like this more desirable Zenitco style charging handle extension, and on the selector switch with the added shelf. The hinge dust cover is going to be your friend if you don't want to use the riser mount. And under that, Arcturus hooked us up with Dean's connections right away, but you've got that adapter in the box if you need it. Onto the magazine, I have to break the news and say that it's proprietary to the Arcturus, but for good reason, since the receiver and mech box are shortened down to be 1-to-1 with the real article. The magazines also needed to be size adjusted to make them more realistic. Then, as per usual for Arcturus, we can go back and forth from 100 rounds to 30 rounds with the flip of a switch along the plastic magazine body after taking the exterior shell off. For the Milsim crowd out there, this is a nice extra, and since these magazines are around the same price as the LCT offerings, if not cheaper, then I think the proprietary nature isn't much of a big deal. I know I'm kind of breezing over a whole bunch of stuff, but this is still an AK platform mostly, so I don't really need to go too in depth over the selector switch being very stiff or light, or it's good. It's just fine.
Something I like about all the Arctururs PP19s is the extended ledge on the selector switch. Super easy to top into the semi.
But next we check out the version 3S gearbox, the S standing for short, as it's 5mm shorter than a standard version 3 gearbox. And I know that's going to irk a lot of players who hate anything proprietary, because to them, a shred of lost material to make this replica more accurate to the real thing might not be worth it. But let me try to rationalize things. First, we took out the radial cut shell from the body, the high torque neodymium magnet motor, and we removed the linear spring from the back thanks to the quick change spring function. And I've always had such a hard time saying that whenever I record these videos. Quick change spring system. Quick change spring system. I don't know why, but that's always been a tongue twister to me. Anyway, this combo backs up the absolutely amazing compression set that sports the best seal that we've ever had pretty much in any AEG review. I'm not trying to blow this out of proportion, but it was really good. It consists of a rear-ported stainless steel cylinder, a polymer cylinder head with dual rubber O-rings, and an air nozzle with another O-ring inside. We can see a steel spring guide with a ball bearing. The piston is then also made from polymer, as you would assume, with a bearing inside that as well. You can note the 14 steel tooth that mates with the CNC steel cut 13:1 gear set. These are spun on bearings, with the sector gear being spun on a bushing, as that gear takes the heaviest load. Then finally, the shimming was also really good right away, so I'm not touching it. I know that every tech likes their shimming differently, and this might mean nothing, but it still was really good here. Arcturus reps have stated that if you try to upgrade the internals, you're more than likely going to downgrade it. And I kind of believe them, even for how bold that statement is. I don't want to mess with anything here, especially that compression set, or the adjustable trigger, as it features a tunable draw thanks to a plate on the outside of the gearbox shell. They are very confident in this setup, and I can see why. So we put everything right back together, and we had nothing to add to our wish list of items that we would like to include. So after this, we went to the Chronograph with a bag of 0.2 gram BBs to see that consistency is stellar and reasonable at 380 feet per second. And that was to be expected. We're seeing a difference of 2 or 3 feet per second in power. So really good. So after this, we moved on to 0.32 gram BBs. As I played with this model, I could tell it would be really consistent here. And with an 11.1 LiPo battery, the rate of fire was at 21 rounds a second. Whenever I'm doing chronograph or range stuff, sometimes people want to come over and see whatever I'm reviewing is reading at. This was one of those times where people were impressed. But then we went over to the range with a bag of 0.32 gram BBs, and we started right away at 200 feet. And at this range, you would have to be blind to miss these shots. Even if you have to swap the spring out, I'm confident in saying that you'll wreck any CQB arena with an SP1 Carbine. And you should be able to take on most field engagements. At 250 feet, you'll still be able to hit a man-sized target easily. Connor, who volunteered for this segment, said that they were still hitting him with some force. So maybe with some adjustments and a drop to 0.28 gram BBs, we could squeeze out a few more feet in range. But again, I'm really impressed. And I swear I'm trying to look for something to rag on here. But if you take your time, you'll be set with something like this. And this isn't some kind of DMR. This is considered a PCC. You're supposed to rush with the PP19. In my opinion, the smaller offerings of the PP19 by Arcturus are much better for CQB situations. But I'm not really surprised to say this, Arcturus is still winning like normal. And with that as my consensus, we move into our last segment. So we bring in the Scott score, which is dependent on the power source of the replica, so AEGs are ranked alongside other AEGs. And with that explained, for performance, the Arcturus PP19 SP1 Carbine is clearly a consistent long-range competitor for its role. FPS is over most US arena limits, but it's right in the sweet spot for field at 380 feet per second with a 0.2 gram BB. So you're not going to dramatically hurt everyone you hit, but you're not going to be so underpowered that you have to use 0.28 gram BBs and less. I didn't have any lockups, jams, difficulty with any of the magazines, and I like that it can make it even more of a challenge to go up against with some simple tightening of the trigger or the programming of the Perun MOSFET. I have options for active braking, pre-cocking, binary fire, burst fire. There's a lot more that I can do with the internals here without having to swap anything out. So With that, a 9 out of 10 is an easy choice. For everyday play, the PP19 in general is going to be more difficult than even the most standard AK to find some parts for, including proprietary magazines. Granted, Arcturus is on top of magazines right now, but they're still quite uncommon to find in the wild or in most airsoft shops. Everything is pretty easy to understand, however, except for the stock, which several people have broken right out of the box. However, I don't think I can really blame Arcturus for this. At the most, all I could suggest is putting a sticker on the stock with some instructions. The model that we mostly paid attention to throughout this review was the longest model, and if you didn't like that and you wanted something more compact, then I would say take a look at the other offerings from Arcturus. And with that, I give the SP1 Carbine a 6 out of 10 for everyday play. Collector value is going to be rocky with the limitation of 500 units for all of these models, but as this has been one of the most popular out of all of them, I think the prices can hold for a long while. They're still AEGs when you boil it all down, but tactical AK enthusiasts love this kind of stuff. And they've shelled out a lot more money to build up LCTs to be like this SP1 Carbine from Arcturus. So as long as you're not doing any irreversible mods to this Arcturus, then I'll give this a 6 out of 10. For build quality, it's really good when it comes to all of the models. The steel body and tight tolerances are all really nice, and I love how this replication is 1-to-1 scale from the receiver to the magazines. The Zenitco fans love this kind of stuff, and not a single person that I lent this Arcturus to had anything bad to say about it. Only that flared magwell annoyed me a bit, but that's something I can easily fix later. So an 8 out of 10 is being granted here. If you take into account everything I've said so far and look at all the stuff that you get from the box, worthiness is obviously high up. I didn't think that I'd be asked by so many LCT PP19 owners to let them test this replica for themselves. They acknowledge that this is expensive, just like I do. But when you write down all the stuff the Arcturus offers over the LCT, it just makes sense if you want the very best AEG PP19. So I'm giving the SP1 Carbine another 9 out of 10. If you add all those scores together, you'd get a 38 out of 50. Now, I received these Arcturus models a few months ago, and over that time, I've been really using this thing a bunch. I even lent mine out to Femme Fatale Airsoft to use at American Milsim's Copperhead event last year. I've been writing all sorts of notes, watching other reviews and gameplays, reading articles, but I just couldn't find much to talk down on. By this point, I feel safe in saying that the LCT replication is obsolete in comparison to the Arcturus. And I would like to hear from anyone who thinks that I'm incorrect by saying that.
Alright, well, whatever, fuck you.
Yes, the price is steep, but I can still say that it's worth it. The Arcturus is 1-to-1 scale, the magazines are configurable and hold more than the LCT, plus you get 2 in the box, you get a rotary hop-up, you get additional accessories straight from the box, you get an adjustable trigger, you get a Perun MOSFET, and all the tactical stuff is already on it with trademarks if that excites you. Being limited to 500 pieces doesn't really persuade my decision making in this case, but all the inclusions cements my decision that even the most expensive model is worth the price. Expensive, yes, but worth it.
And that would be it for this review of the Arcturus PP19 line. I know I kind of breezed over a couple things when it came to this review, as going over all the intricacies of the AK platform is a bit of a waste of time. I wanted to focus more on the stuff that really mattered. Of course, I want to thank Arcturus for taking the risk of letting me say anything I wanted when it came to all of these replicas, even though I don't like the PP19. They let me bash on a bunch of stuff to find any flaws, and I always appreciate anyone who lets me do that. They have a bunch of stuff coming out this year that we'll be taking a look at, and I cannot wait to show some of that stuff off. Of course, you can find this Arcturus PP19 SP1 Carbine on Evike.com. Just be sure to use our exclusive Evike link that you can find in the description down below, and make it your default link by bookmarking it today. Every time you use our exclusive Evike link, you directly support the USAirsoft channel. So thank you to everyone who already uses that link. However, with that said, I want to thank every single person who watched this review, every single person who commented, liked, and everyone who helped me test out all these Arcturuses so I could get all my notes together. I also want to thank D14 and Mission Airsoft for letting me film at their fields. But until that next video drops from the city of San Antonio, Texas, this has been Scott Hollenbeck, and I will be sure to see you all next time.
Everything hurts.
He's hit.
Oh, okay, goodness. Oh, safety. There you go. Now it's working.